You're listening to The Watchers, a show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey watch TV about New Jersey. I am Jodie.
And I'm Andrea. And today, we're recapping season 2, the whole thing of the Showtime series Yellowjackets.
We did it, Andrea.
We did it. A whole show. Well, not a whole show.
Season.
A whole season.
Yeah. That was my little we did it, Joe. Joke. It didn't land, though. I tried.
I'm so sorry.
I had a little intro joke that
died. And I ruined it.
That's okay. You ruined it.
I'm not terminally online enough to get all the memes, you know?
Oh, yeah, I am.
I also absolutely am. I was thinking, here's what happened is I said a whole show, and then I was thinking about the fact that it, like, I know it was only 10. Well, pardon me. I know it was only 9 episodes, but it feels like an accomplishment, you know? We did it.
Does. It does. And I was right.
Would you like to take a moment?
I really fucking like being right. Like, it's an unpleasant part of my personality.
Look, we've all got stuff. You love being right. Misty
I love being
is
right.
a murderer. It's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine.
It could be worse. I don't want to say I got a lot of shit on Reddit. I got a little bit of shit on Reddit.
I would say
for my insistence.
Even if you
that there was
directly
going to be an episode 10,
didn't get a lot of shit, people were really mad at the idea of people thinking there might be a bonus episode.
I know. And I was convinced.
It was really funny to see how angry some people were at just this simple suggestion that we might get a mid-season. That's not the word.
Or off-season.
An off-season episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I never said that it was going to come right after episode 9. But
it could have. I also love the revelation for our listeners who maybe don't spend a ton of time online. It was just somebody on Twitter was saying like they'd waited up really late hoping for that bonus episode. Mm-hmm. And Ashley Lyle just straight up just responded to that one person and was like, we should pull the tweet up because it's really actually kind of lovely. Because I love that that's how we got confirmation. Was just like,
I know. No official anything. Just her being like, oh, honey.
Oh, no.
Actually, this is really funny. So the person who posted initially is Elvin Ashes, Antler Queen on Twitter, posted, listen, I watched a live stream of a burning candle and the freaking Super Bowl on the blind hope of a trailer. Staying up a couple of hours late on the off chance of a bonus episode, walk in the park. And Ashley responded, no, go to bed, get some rest. There will be a bonus episode between seasons, but I love you guys and I don't want y'all to lose sleep thinking it's tonight. And that's how we found out.
So funny. It's so sweet and very fun. And I like that it was a reply to somebody who was not being a pain in the ass about it. They were just like being kind of fun. And
yeah. That's so funny. Because I don't know if I said this on Mike last week, but like I never said that. I'm getting defensive. I never said it was going to be right after episode 9. No, but what I said either to you or on Mike, I can't remember, was that I could see it being some sort of like internet.
I was going to say, I think you didn't even say necessarily that it would be
like a full episode.
Right. Yeah. I think. Yeah. You were just of the mind that like they shot it and shared it and shared proof of it, which they wouldn't do if they didn't have planned for some release. Yeah.
Right. And I know that, a lot of stuff has gotten cut from episodes this season. And I think maybe we should have like a quick chat about that first before we talk about anything else, just because there's been a lot of conversation about cut scenes and things that we're missing and production issues. And maybe that being why some of episode 9 felt kind of choppy and rushed. And whatever the reason for that, I read that the original cut of the last episode of the season was actually 90 minutes long.
That's a lot of show.
That's like a third of the show basically cut. And, I think that they were a little bit rushed because of some of the... I don't know if we talked about this, but apparently during episode 6, the birth episode, they lost a ton of footage.
We haven't talked about this.
Yeah. Somehow like the card got, I mean, as a photographer, the card getting corrupted is like, But something happened to a bunch of the footage they'd shot of the birth scene itself.
Oh, wow.
Which is like a horrific thing to have to go back and
Yeah.
reshoot. And so that put them behind as well. And so, nobody's come out and said, like, this is why it was 9 episodes instead of 10. But there's a lot of chatter, I guess, about lots of production things that happened that could explain why there was sort of a less than overwhelmingly positive reaction to the last episode or the last 2 episodes.
Yeah, and I think something that we didn't really talk about last week too much, but that everybody does know, is that Juliette Lewis was not intending to stick around for all 5 seasons.
Right.
And so her character had to make an exit in some way.
Yeah.
All of that said, we were talking a little bit off mic about this, and I was wondering, I've been trying to decide knowing that for all of those reasons, this episode needed to end with Nat's death. What I would have needed to have seen or to be different to feel, and that sounds so entitled. I don't mean that. I'm not one of those TV watchers. What would have felt more satisfying for me as a watcher, what I would have wanted to have seen on this screen to feel more to feel like this was more of like a satisfying resolution than it did feel to me generally. And I don't know. I mean, the only, for me, this is an easy one, and it's one that we've all talked about, and I don't know what this would even look like, but it's more acceptance on Nat's side. It is so painful, and painful in a way that isn't just to me like, well, sometimes tragedy happens, and sometimes things don't resolve the way you want, and sometimes people die, and it's not, like, I'm okay with that, but this just didn't feel.
But maybe that's why it's so uncomfortable, is because it feels kind of real. Like, people don't generally go into death just like, this is fine.
Yeah, I think it feels. I worry that that's me trying to work myself into feeling better about it, because it doesn't feel honest to this story to me for Nat to have gone out that way.
Right. I mean, so I've rewatched all of season 2 in the past few days.
You are a soldier in our army that we.
I am someone who had dental surgery 2 weeks ago and am having a hard time recovering from it. And so I've been watching a lot of television.
Love that this is a show that you and I have kind of managed to hitch to our
various illnesses.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I did go back and rewatch, and it was interesting because it settled a few things for me in a good way. It actually, watching it all back to back, there were certain things that I think I was able to see the progression of better, and it didn't feel so jarring at the end. And we'll talk a little bit about that, I think, when we talk about the characters. Specifically with Lottie and with Nat, I felt like the adult versions of them, watching it start to finish, it made a bit more sense to me.
Okay.
All of it.
Cool.
Up until the very end. And not even so much Nat's death as an event, and not even how Nat reacted to her death. The plane scene.
Yeah.
The plane scene to me is what sticks in my craw.
Totally.
So I guess we don't really have a plan for how this episode is going to go,
and
so I can just talk about it.
The word recap, but I think
this is not a recap.
I think review, recap, wrap up, State of the Union.
State of the Union, yes. It's our commencement speech. No, that's not a thing. But so I'll just talk about it. So on my rewatch, I did see the seeds that the writers planted throughout the season with Lottie and Nat in 2021. I did see Lottie from the very first episode, from 1 to 9. I saw her start to sort of lose it, fall into it a bit more each episode. And I saw the accumulation on her psyche of each person coming back into her life. So every time someone from the group kind of shows up or reappears in her life, we see her kind of lose it a little bit more.
Right.
And watching that happen step by step in quick succession made a lot of sense to me. I also, thinking about Nat in a different way in 2021, I remember having a conversation about how I was like, is she really buying into all of this?
Right.
Is she not? And then we talked about how like the Lisa of it all really complicated that, because she kind of was responding to Lisa more than to Lottie and the environment. And I started thinking about it from the perspective of Nat as a character who has been sort of this like seeking open wound for a lot of her adult life, who has really wanted a way to not shove all this down necessarily, but solve it or deal with it or cope with it in a much more present way in her everyday life than the rest of them.
Totally, yeah.
You know? And so it's actually not that wild to me that within a couple of days of being there, she would be like, you know what? Like, whatever works. Like, if this is going to help me, like,
well, and
you know, she's skeptical.
Right. But even just, it's so, as soon as you said that, I was brought back to her, like, real first, like, appearance or whatever with the show is her, I mean, it's her leaving rehab, but the first thing she does is seek out somebody from the old crew to deal with it in whatever way she was going to deal with it. Nobody else is doing that. They're all
with
living
a rifle.
With a rifle, but that's one way to handle things. But I just mean, like, that's a head-on, like, admission of, at least, or like recognition of your past in a way that nobody else is doing.
Well, yeah, and we're led to believe that that's because of the postcards, but
still.
Also it does feel to. Yeah, and it feels to me like
it's much more active, I should say. Even Ty, her way, like her interaction with her past is to hire someone else to dig around in secret and make sure that it's going to stay hidden. Like, I think they're the only two who are actively engaging, at least in those first couple episodes in season 1, with it. And you can just see in that way how different it is, and how even though we think of Nat as somebody, because she's, you know, she's a drug user and whatever and all of that. And so you think of that as a way of like trying to like hide it or soften it or whatever. But I don't think that's what's going on with her. And you saying that, like, it really is from kind of day one with her. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, she's like, to me, she's seeking something the entire time. And like, rehab is not the place to deal with it. She's not going to deal with it among strangers.
Right.
Like, we know that she's basically made a pact with all of these women that they're not going to talk about it. So places like, you know, 12-step groups and rehabs and all of that are only really going to deal with the addiction part of it and not what's causing it, because you can't talk honestly in those spaces about it.
Right.
And so I do think that looking back at it and watching the episodes back to back, I can see why Nat as a character would get there, be like, this is all bullshit, but then meet Lisa, see that even though this may all actually be bullshit, there are nuggets of actual like truth in there. And it's a place where she can be more honest about what she's been through, because the person leading the place was there.
Right.
And also because Lisa doesn't seem to give a shit what they did in the woods until the very end.
Right.
And so I think that it's the first time she's been in a place that is quote unquote therapeutic, that doesn't have the same restrictions in honesty that other places she's been to have for her.
Totally.
Like, theoretically, when you go to a 12-step group or you go to rehab, you're supposed to be super honest about your worst things and your worst times, so that you can, like, you know, integrate it and, you know, move on. But you can't do that if you've made a pact with a bunch of other cannibals. Like,
right.
You know. And so, I don't know. It did make sense to me watching it the second time to see her kind of open up to it as quickly as she did. I know people felt it was sort of disingenuous, and I did while I watched it the first time, but I don't think I felt that way the second time.
We've both said, you just kind of reiterated there, like, Nat starting to bond with Lisa seemed to have opened her up in a way that we were hoping would lead to a kind of healing. But it was less than a week ago that she did have a gun in her mouth. Like, Nat isn't Nat has been close to death in ways that in like a near death way, and also in just a proximity way her whole life. So it's not totally unbelievable that she would have jumped in front of Lisa, and that part I'm okay with. It's like you said, it's if she's willing to do that, and for all those reasons that we talked about, then the plane scene, her reaction on the plane scene, in the plane scene for me makes no sense and is like unfair to her character for her to be.
I kind of want to pull apart her reaction and the plane. Because her reaction, that sort of horror at death, I think still does make sense given that she was trying to make progress. Like, she was not in a place where she had given up. She was basically like, come on, guys, let's sit down and talk about this. We've got to move forward. Like, so she was not like, I'm prepared to die. She had kind of, she was very unstable at that little juncture, but she was kind of leaning towards, Jodie, we can get through this.
You're so smart, because it's not, I'm so wrong, because it's not Nat. The thing that makes me feel like better about her death and worse actually about the plane scene now, though, is her jumping in front of Lisa, not as a death wish, which could have been a thing too, like, oh, this is a reckless thing I'm doing because who cares, I'm ready to die, and more of like, I'm protecting. And I wasn't thinking of it that way. I just hadn't articulated this for myself yet. You're cracking open where my issue really is that she jumped in front of Lisa to save her because this is somebody she cares about, and she is seeing this as having meaning, and it does matter. And so for her to die in spite of that is so fucked up.
And honestly, like, this is where I think we're kind of like finding the needle in the haystack for me anyway, is that it's not the fact that she died after that. Like, I can accept people die in shitty fucking ways, right?
Right.
People die at the wrong time all the time, every single day. So if Juliette Lewis was like, I'm only doing 2 seasons, you need to get me out of this somehow, it makes the most sense to have her kind of like sacrifice herself in this way that she didn't for Javi and blah, blah, blah. I'm okay with all of that. Why put her on a fucking plane with Lottie and Javi and her young self? That's the piece. And I fucking love this show, and I don't want to come off as overly critical, because I do think overall, now that I've rewatched it, I did very much enjoy this season. And I don't think we ever thought we weren't going to. But that plane scene just kind of took me out of the, like, if they had just,
I was going to say, are you saying no plane scene or different plane scene?
I'm saying
she also didn't eat anything. I like so much when they show them eating stuff it's such a fun little, Jackie drinks the cocoa.
Right.
Lottie doesn't eat the noodles.
We could serve her some peanuts on the plane.
Some Biscoff.
And then that's how you know. And a ginger ale, because ginger ale is the thing to have on a plane.
That is the in-air. I will drink a hot coffee on a plane any day of the week like a monster. Just bad plane coffee. I'm a
ginger ale and some pretzels. But so, and again, I am not a television person, and I would never profess to have an idea that is better than what they came up with. All I am saying,
it's never stopped anybody else on the internet, so I don't know why you feel like you've got to be careful.
Because I have so much respect for what they've given us. But I think you take that plane scene out and you just have Nat die. Maybe it doesn't fit with the feeling of the rest of the show. Maybe it does need to have something.
I think even
like
if it's
we
not
had a death scene with Jackie.
Exactly.
But I think maybe it's not the plane. Or maybe it's the plane, but it's a different plane. Or maybe it's like, I don't know. I just feel like there was something was off for me in the like, what plane was that? It wasn't their plane.
No.
Was it the plane they were rescued in? I don't know. But
it was just
It didn't fit. Yeah, and like the people that were there, and this has been talked to death on Reddit and everywhere else, but I just think that for me, everything leading up to that, now in a rewatch, I follow. And I can see this sort of like, I can see her death as sort of a necessary tragedy almost. And as a tragedy, as the person who has been the most openly fighting all of these demons this whole time, just when she's starting to deal with it, turn a corner, maybe care for other people in a new way, that's when her life ends. It's awful and it's terrible and it's tragic, and like maybe that's fitting.
Right.
Then to put her on this plane and have her do horror face.
It's not fair, but it doesn't. So a lot of things aren't like.
But I think that they kind of shot themselves in the foot with the sort of seriousness of that moment by then flipping to a scene that was that plane thing with the younger selves, where it felt less sincere almost.
Well, and we keep saying it, but the reasons they're like, but why, right? Like, it's, even if we take her reaction to what's going on out of it, if we just take it at like the like whatever is happening there on the screen, Javi makes sense because it makes sense that he would be there. Her younger self makes a kind of sense that she would be there. It's also just nice to see the two Nats, so I'm fine with that.
I know. I just
Travis,
it didn't.
No, but you know, especially if we want to do some sort of like, maybe one of the things that they all need to do as adults is accept what they did as young people, and kind of like that's that division they've put. They need to like, you know, like maybe these girls probably need to do some reparenting, and this could be like a symbol of that kind of whatever.
Right.
But
yeah.
So fine. So makes sense. Young young Javi makes sense. Where's Travis? Travis should 100% be there, I think. And why is this? I asked it last week more rhetorically. Why? I don't mean this rhetorically. Why is Lottie there?
I know.
And if it's Lottie, why is it young Lottie? Like, what is?
So here's my only sort of projection about that or only reasoning that I could come up with for why that is. And that is that if they have a decent amount of season 3 sort of like mentally mapped already, which I certainly hope they do, that Lottie and Nat are going to be more intimately tied together. And I don't mean that in the way that I've joked about in the past. I mean like intimately in sort of like a co-leader or a rival, or some sort of like the two of them are going to be sort of like foils for each other for longer in the earlier timeline, and become super important to each other in a way that we don't see yet.
Right. Could be.
So like looking back, it will make more sense. That's the only thing I can come up with there.
Yeah. And I guess
for why Lottie would be there.
In my head, whoever's on the plane ushering her to the afterlife should also be dead. But I guess that doesn't need to be the case. Jackie, it wasn't the case with Jackie. Yeah. Also, we're still not sure that was either Jackie or Shauna's or both of their dreams. So so that doesn't even. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when we think about all of the like people who have died on this show, like, so when Jackie died, we saw that like sort of mixed hallucination of hers and Shauna's, or that dream. Like, who else has actually died on the show that has had that shown, right? Like Javi didn't.
Yeah, you're right.
We didn't see Javi going into his death.
You're so right. Yeah.
So I think we've kind of built up this is what it should look like when they're going into their death, but not necessarily from actual evidence, but from like bits and pieces.
Jodie, we're the problem here.
We're the problem. I know. I mean, I knew that.
I'm so sorry. My apologies to Ashley and
to Bart and
Ashley. They didn't deserve that.
Yeah. No. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts after a rewatch. I feel like I saw more clearly the path for current day Nat and Lottie towards the end of this season. I saw them kind of their paths the whole way be a little clearer.
That's
cool. I also saw Van differently. I don't know if you want to talk about Van.
We could talk about Van. I would love to talk about Van and Ty. Was it how Van's a little demon? Because so just for listeners, I didn't rewatch season 2. Jodie is a stronger person than I am. I couldn't. But what I did
You just didn't have dental work.
What I did do is I went back and listened to, which I think is probably a strength that I have that maybe you don't, the ability to just listen to your own self-talk on a microphone back with complete objective distance. I'm so desensitized and disembodied from my own voice at this point. It's like, could be listening to anybody. It's fine. I listened to our season 1 recap and our season 2 trailer review that we dropped quickly right before season 2 launched, and just to see what we were thinking about then, what questions we wanted answered, what we were predicting, what the general conversations were, not just on our podcast but with the community, and to see what the show kind of answered and didn't, and all of that. And we were weirdly, there was something about Van that we said in our recap that was like, we thought she was going to be fully bought into the woo of it all for some reason, and perfectly well adjusted, just like a wooey, well adjusted person. And we were, Van's bought into the woo of it deep down, but she was hardcore denying it until she set foot on that campground, and then it all went out the window. We think, yeah. But that is not the Van we thought we were going to meet. Is not the Van we met, and I think
so. Here's
tell me what you think, because I think that probably starts in '96. We were really looking at Van through rose-colored glasses, I think.
So here's what I think happened. Liv Houston is a delight, and I have a long-standing love for Lauren Ambrose, and I think that, as happens many times in this show, the wonderfully charming actors that play these parts with such humanity give us a sort of creative a feeling of warmth and love towards these characters that they may not have earned through their actions. Because going back to watch this season, so I talked about how Lottie and Nat in 2021, I kind of watched the arc of what happened to them. I was watching Van and Ty more carefully in 96 in my rewatch. And I feel, and I think we might have briefly mentioned this at one point or another, but I feel like Van is manipulating Ty this whole time.
It is so funny.
And that Ty is just desperate for things to make sense and for things to be okay and for her to stop sleepwalking and for her to stop having these she doesn't want any of this shit.
Right.
She doesn't want it.
Well, and we even said very offhandedly, I'm going to tell you what we said, and then I'm going to ask you a question that is speculation on my part related to now based on what you just said. We said at one point, I think it was with when Josh Gondelman was on, I was like, it's not great that she's letting Ty doesn't want to be sleepwalking through the wilderness like you just said. And Van is using her as a kind of I didn't say metal detector then, it's just what I'm thinking of now. As an unwilling metal detector to seek out these symbols. And waking her up when they get to the symbols, right? And we even say in the moment, it's not great. And then never mention that completely being an issue again.
Yeah.
Because that episode is the one also where where they get their very brief reunion at the end of the episode. So we were so smitten and so excited for that to happen that we were just like, well, live and learn. My question is, do you think Ty actually did stop sleepwalking at all? How would Ty know? Or did Van just
not wake her up?
Yeah. How would Ty know?
That's a good question. I think it's possible that she did. I think it's also just as possible that Van is I think Van loves Ty, but I also think that Van had an extremely strange near-death experience where she got eaten by
which one?
I know. Well, yeah, exactly. But also the one where she got nearly chewed to death by a bunch of wolves while Ty was supposed to be on watch. I feel like was some sort of a turning point for her where she became very calculated. And she might have been before that, but it was much more noticeable to me after that, where she became much more calculated and sort of self-motivated in figuring out what was going on, why they were there. And like, I think she loves Ty, but I also think that she sees Ty as a means to an end in a way. And I feel terrible saying that because I love these two so much, but I think we were blinded by, you know, sort of the charm of the people playing these characters.
I think you might be right. Now,
because I like watched her in episodes 3 and 4 specifically. And then even at the end, I think it's the last episode where Ty is, it's when everybody's like super hungry. Maybe it's episode 8, not 9, where like we see her, that weird effect where like she's looking at the cup of tea and then she looks up and she sees 2 Tys in the window glass. And she turns around, she sees other Ty, which then turns into Van. I'm like, something's going on here.
Well, and then and what I'm about to say, this episode is just full of me prefacing what I'm about to say and then saying it, so sorry. But what I'm about to say, I think it could probably be both things, because we talked a lot about when they first reunite and they're at Van's place. Ty a couple of times says like, and maybe not just said, or like when they're on their way to the retreat, that kind of stuff, Ty will give her like an out. Like Ty's like, oh, I'll just leave. And then Van says like, oh, you might as well make yourself useful. You can go reshelve these.
Right.
And we were like, oh, what a sad kind of codependent thing to know this person isn't good for you. And as they're walking away, you offhandedly give them a reason to stay. And it's like, well, maybe. But also, does Van have it in her head that she needs Ty or other Ty or whatever? Because that's the thing too, is when other Ty shows up, she says, this isn't where we're supposed to be. And then she walks off and we don't see what happens after that. And I don't think they went on some like late night adventure necessarily, but like Van has information about other Ty that we don't to some degree.
And that Ty doesn't.
Exactly.
Like Ty asks her like, what did I say?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, and it's like, Van could very easily have been like, I think you need to leave. Like, this isn't good for me. Instead, she's like, so where do you think we need to be?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I think part of like watching these stories on TV, we always want to have like a good one and a bad one, right? Or, you know, and I think that because we know Ty has done terrible things in 2021 as quote unquote other Ty, which she still did them.
Right.
I think we were trying to think of, well, then Van has to be the good one. Right?
You and I falling for this despite every week saying things like, well, they're not all good or all bad, or these are complicated women, or I think that their rage is important and something we should be paying. Like, we're saying all of that and then also being like, oh, Van, you're so silly.
Yeah. So I think that like neither of them is good or bad, but I do think that we have been looking at Van with rose-colored glasses this whole time. And going back and rewatching, all I saw this time around was her like steeliness and her sort of calculation and her like real emotion at times, but also like unwillingness to let that affect how she handles the situation that they're in. So yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, I also felt like I saw not so much 2021 Ty, but definitely 96 Ty as a victim of all of this. Like, I think I had forgotten or not noticed or whatever the first time around how little she wants this to be happening to her.
Yeah.
Like, she really doesn't want this. And like, she's humoring Van at all turns to like, with this kind of quote unquote woo-woo shit. But like, I think she's kind of willing to do anything to make it stop. Meanwhile, Van's like, yeah, tie yourself to me. And then, you know, you may wake up in the woods with me later on, but, you know, at least we'll know where the tree is.
Man,
Ty's like, I don't give a shit where the fucking tree is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
poor man.
So.
Ty and Lottie both, that we kind of are being puppeted through this in ways that I don't want to, especially Lottie. I think it can be dangerous to totally excuse. Well, no, I don't believe that. I think I was starting to say what I think. I think I was like hearing resistance to that preemptively. I just think Lottie has been treated so unfairly. I don't think it's this is complicated, because I don't think if you really are starting a retreat that your only goal is to help people, that you keep control of their bank records and make them wear the same color and all of that.
In the rewatch, I noticed I had a lot more sympathy for 1996 Lottie.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reminded of some of the more manipulative shit that 2021 Lottie was doing.
Right.
Like this, with the thing we talked about where she like tosses the smoothie in a plastic cup into the planter. Like, and she's like kind of bitchy towards Lisa and then catches herself because Nat's watching. Like,
that's another thing that's a huge red flag that you and I clocked at the time and then just kind of moved past. And it's not the same thing as how somebody treats their server at a restaurant, tells me everything I need to know about them, but it's very similar. It is very similar.
Yeah, and so, but I think this is the same thing where like Lottie in both timelines is not as bad as we think she is, but also not as good as we want her to be.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
I think you're so right.
Like, the thing with Lottie that's complicated, though, is the mental illness of it all. And I kind of want to have a slightly more nuanced conversation about that, especially after all of the conversations all the scenes this season where it's been brought up, you know, the diagnosed schizophrenic Lottie, the like she ends up in the hospital again, all of that stuff. I think that we talked in the very beginning of this season about how we were not entirely psyched about the way that ECT was portrayed in the beginning. And I think that the people that make this show are dancing on very dangerous ground here. Totally. And I hope they know that because that first episode with the ECT, I did not think they did well. I think that if you're going to show that, you should not be showing it in a way that doesn't happen at that time, that is more like scare tactic.
Totally.
That does refer back to horror movies of the past, which I get, right? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a horror movie in its own way, you know? But it's not a nuanced take on what that experience would have been like in 1996 or 98 or whatever. And I also think that the way they're playing her now, I love the dance between realism and the supernatural, but I think that when it comes to mental illness, you are playing with a very sort of very tricky conversation. Because... And I will let you speak eventually.
No, this is...
I have very specific thoughts about this because people with mental illness, especially serious mental illness like schizophrenia, are often blamed for really horrific things happening, right? And criminalized and put in prison. And, you know, the prisons have become our mental health system in this country. And so there's a lot of really serious... real life implications behind portraying someone who has been diagnosed with schizophrenia in any way on television as kind of being taken as the representative of that illness. And so I'm not coming down with like some sort of harsh criticism one way or the other. I'm just nervous.
Right. I agree.
About what they're doing with Lottie. And I don't think that they've made any huge missteps at this point. But they're playing with something here that is like a very serious thing and has been never really portrayed well in media. And I just am like, please, please, please tell me you have someone consulting on this show that has had some real experience in the psychiatric system.
My feeling is no. I mean,
my feeling after episode 1 was no.
Right. Well, but even like... even the like best case scenario for this kind of thing for me is, because what I'm thinking is like most schizophrenics aren't fully hallucinating rooms and conversations with people who don't exist, and then walking away from those and kind of like quote unquote snapping back to reality in a way that like it's not until that last conversation with her quote unquote therapist that we see where we see Lottie understand that it's not real. And the like best case scenario version of this is Lottie is a person with a mental illness. And I don't think this is what's going on with this show, though. Lottie is a person with a serious mental illness and also has supernatural conversations with a being who doesn't really exist. And those are two separate things. And the lines are getting blurred because people don't really understand the illness. And that isn't to say that there aren't more extreme versions, but you know, and because of that, her actual like concerns about the sort of supernatural whatever that's happening are getting ignored because people are like, oh, it's just crazy Lottie. And I don't think that's what's happening on the show. And I don't even like that. I don't like that idea, but it's the only one where I feel like that could sort of excuse how they're portraying her mental illness.
Right. Yeah. And I think that like part of what makes me nervous about all this, and part of what I think why I said like I hope they have a consultant on staff, is because like people can and have written dissertations on the idea of the mad woman, right?
Absolutely.
This idea of like, you know, women who were hospitalized for having like religious visions and things like that. And that slippery line between actual mental illness and sort of what is a more acceptable version of that in certain religions and things like that. And like,
or
there's just
women behaving out of acceptable character for the time being described as mad so they could be,
blocked up by their husbands.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is, you know, there's a reason that I have done all this work on the yellow wallpaper. Like, I think that there's this huge
Rosemary's Baby, to refer back to that. Like,
there's this huge history around women and mental illness and the notion of hysteria and things that women were hospitalized for that men wouldn't have been. And I just think that, and maybe it's because this is my hobby horse and my area of research, but I think they're treading on very dangerous ground here. And I'm not saying they're going to do it badly, but I haven't seen a lot of like, I think that first episode with the ECT scene really tipped me off that like,
I think we could both agree that was handled badly.
That was handled badly.
But I think that was handled, not to make an excuse for them, that was handled badly in a way it is always handled badly. Like, my guess is they believe that that's what it looked like in 96.
Maybe what it looked like. I hope they know that it's not and they did it on purpose, but like, why would you do it that way?
I'm not sure which is
So anyway,
worse,
I don't want to like,
actually.
I know. Yeah. I don't want to rehash all of episode 1 again, but I also just want to point out that I don't know that there is a TV production in the world that could take on this topic sensitively and make it entertaining and do it well. And in that case, maybe you don't make Lottie a diagnosed schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
unless the only way it works, and then it doesn't work for the show that you and I want to be watching, is let Lottie be diagnosed as schizophrenic, and then let us all find out that no, supernatural is here.
Right.
This entity is here, and everybody is so fucked up about how they handle mental illness that they just decided to put that on Lottie. But then that totally undermines this show as an exploration of actual trauma and these women. And the fact that it's we did talk about this a little bit last week. It's something that I have not been able to stop thinking about. And you talking about husbands locking their wives away for behaving. It's not, and Lottie needs help right now. Either way, whether it is mental illness or what. But the fact that the people who make that decision for her are these women from her past, and they get to decide on and off throughout this one short episode whether or not they're calling a crisis team, whether or not she's going to go get some help somewhere, whether or not that help is actually going to be actually helpful or not is a whole other conversation. But it's another version of that. These other women have decided that she isn't, like, The whole thing is really...
And previously it was her dad deciding.
Yeah.
Like in that scene in the beginning of the season where he's like, can you fix her?
Well,
you
and
know?
what you said too earlier, that like her mental health, you see it's a kind of steep decline as like more and more as each woman shows up, and then they're the ones who put her away.
Yeah.
Is really upsetting. That's really upsetting.
I mean, like when you think about it since we talk about how the show is an exploration of trauma, like if you think about her at the beginning of this, yes, maybe she's sort of a toxic cult leader figure, right? But she kind of has her shit together in some way.
Right. Better than she hasn't killed a dog or anything like that, as far as we know.
Right. Yeah. And as you watch these people from her past come into her present, she devolves, right? And so it's like what you said is so interesting about them also being the ones to make that decision for her, because they haven't made that decision for Ty.
Right.
Like,
she killed a dog and almost her wife. I know that whatever. And Shauna killed a man, whatever. Ty killed her dog. Don't listen, Pacey.
Yeah. And so I think that all this to say, like, I could talk about the mental illness side of this forever. But I think that there's no solid conclusion to land on because they're still going. Like, as to how they're handling it, I think we've seen signs that maybe not great, but also like maybe will be proven wrong.
Yeah.
I hope.
I'm open to that.
And I do think that, like, I'm fascinated, obviously, with this subject of how mental illness has been described and categorized. And, you know,
I also wonder, this is something that you and I both, it's really important to both of us. And it's also something, it's funny, we've worked on it from different angles, but as I have even stuff you can find online now of me writing about the mad woman in the attic, that whole trope and what it does. But, and it's something that you and I didn't know was a special interest of each of ours until we started talking about it for this show. So I don't know if it's something like, are other people even bothered by it who haven't thought about it as, or who don't have direct experience with it. I would guess,
right,
if you're not coming at it from either or both of those angles, maybe this isn't a big deal to you. But I don't like that then you're walking away with this portrayal as an example.
Right. Well, and I do think that, you know, from my hours and hours on Reddit this season, I have seen threads. I know. My life is very exciting. I have seen threads from people who have had ACT, who, you know, have serious mental illness of some kind and aren't thrilled with this representation. So I don't think it's just us. I think that there are a lot of people that are a part of the community of people who deal with mental illness in some way, who love this show and also have some concerns about that portrayal. So I do think that I don't think it's just us. I think that we just happen to also have like special research nerd interests in this area that maybe give us more of a historical
and I'm just never not going to watch a show like this without that lens on, I think is the other thing.
Yeah.
Is like it. Yeah.
Well, and I wanted to, maybe this will be a way for us to shift to another thing I wanted to talk about, because we've talked about the yellow wallpaper in previous episodes. And I think I sent you, did I send you the Giant Wisteria?
You did.
The little short story?
I don't remember if I got a chance to read it.
Yeah, that's okay. I just kind of wanted to mention it in relationship to this show. And if this is something that the showrunners have actually read and has anything to do with what they're doing here, I'm going to be like...
Is Wisteria purple?
Yes. And white, depending on which kind.
Okay. Does that spoil what you're about to say? Because I'll stop.
No, it doesn't. It's just a nice little side note.
Okay.
So that story, The Giant Wisteria, is also by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, who wrote The Yellow Wallpaper. And it's a very short story. I should have reread it before we started doing this, but...
Do you want to take a minute? Because it's pretty short, right? Hey, folks, it's Andrea from this episode's future here. I'm just popping in to say we actually took a break in this moment to read The Giant Wisteria or The Giant Wistaria. So that's what we're referring back to right here. How fun. I mean, how sad. How fun and sad, which is my favorite genre.
Am I not onto something
Of course
here?
you're onto something. So let's go ahead, Jodie.
Okay.
Give us a little little literature lesson here.
Okay. So I will do my best. I teach art, not English, but so The Giant Wisteria is a short story by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I can't remember if it was written before or after the Yellow Wallpaper, but it takes as its subject a young pregnant woman who gives birth to a baby out of wedlock. Her parents are less than thrilled about this and are going to possibly get rid of the baby and have her marry her cousin when they go back to England. The story takes place in New England. We don't see how that ends, but then we revisit the house that they were at with a young group of friends who are convinced it's haunted. They see a ghost of a young woman holding a bundle. They go down to investigate, and they find in a well in the basement the body of a baby about a month old. And then as the construction crew are pulling up the porch that has been sort of consumed by this giant wisteria tree, they find the body of a young woman wearing the cross that they've all seen the ghost wearing. So it's a ghost story. It's also a story about a young mother having a baby out of wedlock and what happens to her and that baby, which is that they are both dead. Mm-hmm. But they're also entwined with the house and the tree. And this is why I keep thinking about this story in connection to Yellowjackets, because of the woman that Javi sees in the tree. This is where my brain went.
Oh, funny.
So, because, and this is like a lot of leaps to get here, and I acknowledge this.
I love a good leap.
But,
leap away.
Yeah. But so in the production stills we've seen of Jason Ritter playing our cabin guy, he's holding a baby. And a lot has been made of this already. Like, it's to the point where everyone on the Yellowjackets Reddit has referred to this as Javi's friend already. Mm-hmm. That this baby somehow lived, was his daughter, lives in the caves under the tree, who knows. And I've been poo-pooing that this whole time. I've been like, guys, that's a lot of jumps to get there, which it is. But then I remembered this story and I was like, is someone on this writer's room a Charlotte Perkins Gilman fan? Because the lady in the tree that Javi draws in that picture, and the idea of like his friend who told him to stay away from the cabin, we don't know that it's like not Ty or someone else. We also don't know that it's a real person. We don't know that it's a hallucination or a ghost or whatever. But this story is free online. You can just Google Charlotte Perkins Gilman Wisteria. It's spelled with an A and not an E.
I'll drop a link in the show notes.
Wisteria.
I really suggest. Go ahead.
Oh, cool. No, I was just gonna say that I think that, again, I know it's a lot of leaps, that if we are gonna get a cabin guy backstory, and he did happen to have a daughter, and Javi like is living underneath a tree for a while and has a friend who's a girl, I know I sound like a completely insane person.
I don't think so. I love this stuff. Although maybe I'm not the one if I'm saying, I don't think you sound crazy, you might sound crazy. Right.
But I mean, if this is a show that is, and we know it is, playing with the unreliable narrator thing, and the Yellow Wallpaper is like it's literally taught in psychology classes as this representation of an unreliable narrator. I don't know that it's too far to think that like this lady in the tree kind of thing could have some literature-based origin, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Here's what stood out.
That's my thesis.
I really love that. I also think so I just read this for the first time, so I have not spent time peeling it apart. It felt to me on my first read through that we get, like Jodie said, we get the first narrative that's like the parents talking about the young woman and her baby that gets taken away from her and married off, and she gets married off like you said, and then it cuts to that other.
But she doesn't actually, because she ends up dead under the house.
Right, obviously, yeah. But they don't. That's not revealed in the.
Correct. Yes.
They're talking about marrying her off, and you get them. The friends who are there now in the slightly more present day timeline.
Is it 25 years later?
I don't think it's 25 years later. It seems to be, I guess it's hard to say how much later, but it seems to be, it's a little while. But some of them so badly want the house to be haunted. They seem to be feeding on each other's fears of, or not even fears because they want it, but like one of them says they have a dream and then the other one is like, oh, I had a dream too. Well, it was more of a feeling. And they keep like psyching each other up so that when you get to the end, if you didn't have that little bit at the beginning, you're kind of expecting that you would be expecting there to be nothing and it would just be this collective delusion. But then you get the physical, but it almost feels like they talk it into existing in the past.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
That like their
it totally
collective belief affected something in the history of this story to make it seem more real.
Right.
Obviously, like one of the cool things about Perkins is that she does write these sort of like supernatural horror stories, but that are very grounded in a kind of reality. And like you said, the unreliable narrator is so important because you could just, like the Yellow Wallpaper, you could sort of read it two ways. The correct way to read it is to be involved and caring for the woman whose trauma is being treated as something supernatural, otherworldly, but is really just, this woman is being treated really poorly and suffers because of it. And then we see that reverberating through the story, which is what's happening here.
Well, and she's known for writing about like these feminist themes of like women not being believed and women being sort of not given autonomy over their own bodies.
And we could very easily be talking about Lottie, and to a greater extent, especially with the giant wisteria or wistaria, the whole group. Like how much of what happened, we still don't really know how much of what happened in the past as we're seeing it is being portrayed truthfully and accurately, and how much of it is filtered through a lens of what their memories are. And one thing I will say for Lottie about ECT that they actually don't really talk about that much is it can really fuck with your memory. And so can, which they have talked about, which Lottie talks about, so can serious trauma. And so can 25 years of not talking about what happened.
Right.
So I think all of that is important to keep in mind when we think about what Lottie thinks is happening in 2021, what she thought happened in 96. And that's really true for all of them. Shauna saying none of that was real. When we don't know how real or not real any of it was still. Like, I think you and I
could be seeing, like, I think that we're being led to feel like the scenes in 96, we're seeing them kind of as they actually were. But I think it's just as likely that we're seeing it, each scene, through the eyes of someone that was there. Right. And like what they remember and what they don't remember.
Or it's like a weird collective best representation memory. And I think it's, man, Jodie, I'm so glad you brought this story up and that I've read it now, because it's also like this story has a past and a present timeline, and the past timeline really affects the present timeline, and the present timeline really affects how you read that past timeline. Like, and also Wisteria is purple. Heliotrope.
Yeah. And it's so funny you mentioned the purple thing, because I hadn't even made that connection because I think about Wisteria a weird amount. But
yeah, sometimes you need fresh eyes to be like, also it's purple.
It's also purple, yeah. Well, because it can be white, but in this story it is actually purple wisteria because they mention it.
Oh, interesting. I love that.
Yeah. So that was a bit of a digression, but
I'm going to cut, now I'm not going to cut it because I want people to know that that is not a digression. I mean, I guess technically it was because but I think that is so relevant to this conversation. I'm so glad you brought it up. She's even
kind of
Jodie, even one of the major markers of the poor girl
Yeah.
who dies is she's wearing a necklace. It's a
gold
cross,
necklace.
but it's a thin gold necklace that is mentioned. This is, like you said, 6 short pages, and
Yeah.
it's mentioned
I know.
5 times.
Yeah.
And there's a dead baby.
Yeah.
Like, what the
And,
heck?
and a woman in a tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Our podcast should be way more popular than it is. We're good at this shit. That's what happens when you get two like history and literature nerds together to analyze
Who
something.
don't get a chance to do this as often as either of them would like to.
I know.
So that's your reading. I know we sort of spoiled it, but it's that was, again, and I only read it just this one time here. But I'm gonna go back and reread it as soon as we're done talking. There's so much.
Yeah.
This was a real little like sad little delight. Again, fun and sad and scary thing to read. There's a ton.
It's
in
a
there.
little gem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we move on to our other characters and onto our kind of like, little final segments, I have one more thing that I thought was really funny about how we were thinking of Lottie early on. We weren't sure what to make of, and really through a lot of season 2, how much of the retreat was her genuine desire to help people. We were like speculating as to whether or not it was more a cover for something more sinister. A lot of our evidence for that came from the season 2 trailer, where we see people dancing around a fire, we see people wearing the masks, and we're like, what's going on with all of that? None of that happens until the other women show up. None of that is Lottie's doing, really. I mean, that's, only partly
The fake burial.
The fake burial, which we know is a silly, I think anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
the masks are a little creepy in that moment, but
I think it is so performative.
yeah,
It doesn't actually, none of that actually gets sinister, I should say, until the other women show up. And we were using that. We really held on to that when we were talking about the trailer as being like, because we didn't know Lottie then in the present at all.
Not adult Lottie at all. Yeah.
So she very well could have been the sort of mastermind bringing all these women together which is funny, to initiate a hunt, blah, 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 which is...
Right. Meanwhile, it's like happening to her.
Yeah. Which is
Like,
a lot of what happened in, not all, again, of
Yeah.
what happened in 96 with her.
Yeah, I mean, not participating in the hunt at first. I think that, if we think of the arc of Lottie, there's 2 arcs, really. There's like the previous arc, and then there's the 2021 arc. But there's also the overall arc, which is like she starts out, I feel, as sort of a normal kid with some like either supernatural tendencies, like witchiness, 90s witchiness.
It is important for us to remind everybody that she accurately predicted the car accident that almost kills her and her whole family.
Right. And also that could just be the way that she remembers it.
That's also true.
So
What a show.
yeah, I know. So if we want to talk a little bit about Misty and Shauna, I feel like Shauna this season, I don't know. What do you think about the direction that Shauna has gone this season?
Shauna hasn't really... The thing I'm most interested in talking about Shauna's storyline, honestly, is Callie. Like, Shauna didn't really throw us too many curveballs, really. Like, we got Shauna...
Like, she was predictably unhinged.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
whole season, like doing stupid shit.
Yeah, and the few times where we saw these like raw emotions pop up with her, that I still think, I talked about this a little bit a couple of weeks ago, I really think Shauna is so divided from or distant from her actual emotions and how she thinks people should be reacting to a situation. And I don't mean that necessarily in the way where people like call her a sociopath. Again, we just spent so much time talking about Lottie's mental health. I'm not really trying to diagnose Shauna.
We're not gonna, yeah.
This isn't what I mean. But in a lot of those moments where we're like, was she being authentic? I think she probably was. I think there's part of Shauna that is so mixed up and so messed up that she wants to feel the way she thinks a person should feel and just can't connect with it. So
Yeah.
I do think that when she cries to Matt, I do think when she sort of cries to the other women when they're in the sharing shack, I think those are a kind of real feeling for her, the closest she gets to a real feeling that she can connect with. I don't think she's the big like duplicitous, lying, conniving, like I don't think it's that
Right.
intentional for her. I think she
Yeah.
is trying to, in her weird way, often trying to do not the right thing, but feel the right way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what the word I always come up with when I think about Shauna is flailing.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
she constantly feels like she's flailing. Like she's trying so hard to, like you said, like feel the way she's supposed to feel, do the things she's supposed to do, and it's just not working.
Right.
And it never really has worked. But I guess, you know, all of the events that make up this show are kind of triggering all of that even more with her. But I do think you're right that the more interesting part of Shauna this season is actually Callie. Like, I love Melanie Linsky and she's doing amazing work. And I love seeing how that disconnect you're talking about really does show up in her performance. But I think that her relationship with Callie and also her actually, to me, it feels like seeing Callie for the first time this season as something other than just an annoying teenage daughter that like she doesn't really have much of a connection to.
That's how we
Like,
felt about her too.
Exactly.
I don't even think I used her name in our. I think I just called her Shauna's shitty daughter, which is
Yeah.
not nice. Even
Well,
then,
but you know, Shauna called her an asshole.
yeah,
You know? And that's kind of how we were meant to think about her. And then as Shauna sees her differently, so do we, right? As Shauna starts to see her as a more complicated person who maybe has some tendencies that Shauna has and, you know, is a piece of her and a piece of Jeff and all of that, we also start to see her that way.
Totally.
And we see sort of that kind of the two parents both kind of living inside of Callie and like fighting it out almost, you
Yeah.
know?
and when she gives that talk about Callie to Jay, and she says, "You have, you know, a child." Like I forget the exact wording, but she's like, "And you can't love them, but you do, of course, in spite of yourself."
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what we're talking about with that emotional, where like the love is really there. She has a really hard time feeling it and connecting to it.
Yes.
But that comes
Yeah.
from, I think, if we can draw such a straight line from Shauna in 96, like talking to her dead friend, refusing to like see her dead, to when she has to prepare Javi's body, covering her eyes to do it. Like,
And in between those two things, losing a baby.
yeah.
And hallucinating that the baby actually lived.
Right. And it's like, if you have dealt with that pain of losing your best friend, who we've talked about their complicated relationship, while you were pregnant with that girl's boyfriend's child, who then
Right.
dies in the wilderness, and then
Yeah.
you have to cut up a young boy who died at you and your friend's hands,
And probably other
basically.
people.
Right. Like, no wonder you have like become disconnected.
Yeah.
It's like, what a reasonable and understandable coping mechanism.
It's a protection.
And necessary, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, could she have done some work in the last 25 years to unpack that and deal with
Possibly.
that? Maybe.
Yeah, therapy. might
She's
have
also
helped.
a Jersey girl, and like, you know, we're not always
Yeah.
the best at dealing with our emotions in healthy
I don't
ways.
know,
So
what are you talking about?
so I get it.
Wait, what are you talking about? No, I totally agree with you about Shauna. And I think that it's one of the things that makes her kind of a difficult character to talk about because I don't think Shauna knows who Shauna is.
Right.
And so she's still circling around that. And so therefore, as an audience, we are too, trying to figure out like what actually Shauna is at her core. Because we also, I want to move on, but we also do know zero about her growing up.
Totally.
We've never met her family. We've never met her
So
parents. We do know
crazy.
that they didn't have a lot of money. There's a class thing there with her and Jackie. But that's really all we know. We don't know we got no glimpses like we did with the others. Other than her bedroom, which is like a normal teenage bedroom. It just happens to be in an attic, which I
Right.
thought was
Yeah,
funny.
well, she's our cool alt girl, so she gets the attic. You know, like,
Yeah.
she had a real conversation with her parents about getting to move up into the attic. So,
Right. And so then, should we touch on Misty real quick before we
Oh, yeah,
kind of move on.
I don't want to ignore her, even though
No, we don't want to ignore Misty. She had some of our most delightful moments this season.
what this show would have been without Misty and Walter.
Oh my God.
So bleak.
So dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. We needed them. I do think that Misty has had an arc this season and during this show from mainly because of the introduction of Walter. You know, I think that he seems to have triggered a memory in her of what it was like to have someone in her life that understood her and liked her anyway. Previously that being Crystal, even though when Crystal found out what she was really like, she did not appreciate it.
Yeah.
But
well, and that's why she was so guarded about Walter, because she figured when he found out, he would also.
Turns out he's the enabler she never needed.
I'm so glad he's here. I've been saying, like, we have talked so much. Our listeners are so tired of hearing me say the part I'm about to say, which is we talk a lot about
Elijah Wood.
Oh, yeah, that I love Elijah Wood. But also, my love for Elijah Wood and your love for Lauren Ambrose, I feel like, are on like a similar, and our listeners are just going to have to deal with that. But about the men in this show being exactly what they... It's like when someone tells you who they are, believe them. And that is so true about the men on the show. And when Walter was first introduced, we thought maybe there's a wrinkle in that. But that isn't to say all the men, like, we call them benign. And I think that's actually not
He's
totally.
not benign.
No.
Yeah.
But he is. What's on the surface is what's underneath. Like, he's a creepy little weirdo who is charmed by Misty, so it seems. And even if he's got other stuff going on that we don't totally know about, it just seems like his motivations are exactly what he has presented them, which has been true for all of the men on the show as far as we know so far. So he still falls into that category, even if he's not the most, like, you know, he's not like a himbo like Jeff or a manic pixie dream boy like Adam, but he just is. He said he was looking. He's a Moriarty looking
for his Sherlock.
And so I'm not, you know.
Yeah, and I think in that not dichotomy, but in that pairing of Moriarty and Sherlock it's an interesting way to think about Walter and Misty, because, you know, Moriarty is quote unquote the villain. And I do think that there are hints especially in the last episode of like Misty maybe meeting her match with Walter and then some. Like, he may be even more willing than she is to kind of like...
Yeah, Misty wasn't
he jumped
brewing
in 2 seconds.
hot cocoa to kill somebody.
Theoretically, she was in on that plan, but he was like all about it.
Yeah.
Like,
for
he
somebody
came in and was
he's
like...
only known for a minute.
Yeah. He was like, let's do this. This is going to be fun. So I do think that she's kind of met someone who not only will meet her at her crazy, but maybe push her past it.
I know it's wicked of me to say so, but I kind of hope so. Although not her, her heartbreak at the. I do want to also Misty calling Nat her best friend over and over again, despite the fact that they haven't seen each other in, you know, a couple of decades, and Nat trying so hard to shake her at every turn is like. I don't know that you can say Nat's your best friend then. It is really heartbreaking because Misty is somebody who is longed forever to be accepted and loved unconditionally by somebody. And so it is, I think I worry, I mean, on my list of who I'm worried about, it's probably Lottie first and then Misty. Not that I need to rank it, but I'm so worried for what season 3 Misty is gonna look like.
I mean, hopefully she'll be having more musical numbers with Walter, more more car trips with tapes.
Would like to remind everybody
musicals.
This, despite everything we just talked about for the last hour or so, this show's a comedy.
It's definitely got that in there. That's for sure.
The musical numbers or number.
Yeah.
What a. Also,
fantastic.
I think it feels unfair to say one of my favorite moments is a moment that is just the men in the show. With a show that for us is so important about celebrating the women in it. But Walter singing "Send in the Clouds" to himself while making that hot cocoa in that poisonous looking mug is just what a perfect moment.
It is a beautiful moment. I mean, they do give the men in this show some really wonderful moments. And I think some of that maybe we'll talk about. I would like to pivot us, if I may.
You may pivot us
to a couple of categories that I have come up with. Pretty expected ones in some ways, but
we love a category here at the Watchers podcast.
Yeah. So first, I would like you to tell me what you think your favorite quote is or line from the season, or one of them. It doesn't have to be the one.
Oh boy, I've got there are two that came to mind immediately, and there are two that have.
I'm cheating because I wrote mine down.
Well, that's okay. There are two that we've already talked about, but how could we not? One is I'm mixing my pop culture metaphors because I'm fucking upset from Van, which was just a perfect. There's Van. There she is.
Yeah.
And then. Oh, I don't want to misquote this one because it just happened, but it's the American family is crumbling. Yeah. You try making a living in sectionals. Is that the line?
Yes, I think that's it. Yeah.
The American family is crumbling. You try making a living in sectionals.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I have a little bit of an advantage because I did rewatch. And so I have some of the earlier season ones as well.
Lay them on us.
Okay. So there's a couple. There's more than a couple, but
I want to hear all of them.
So from episode 1, the only thing you should ever say to the cops is, "I want my lawyer." That's why I put it on the cookie. It's
been so fun to see the different "I want my lawyer" cookies and cakes that people have been making.
I know. This one is just close to my heart. How do you get an art major off your front porch? You pay for the pizza. As a former art major.
Was that Jeff? That's Jeff talking shit about
Jeff.
Adam to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. There is the now famous, "I think this stuff is for bisexuals and goths."
I can't believe that wasn't the first one I thought of.
I mean, it was earlier in the season.
That is,
like I said, I just did a rewatch.
And again, Jeff, he
gets such good lines.
Never misses.
I mean, again, another Jeff one. You ever churn butter?
Jeff wants to go to Colonial Williamsburg because he wants to really shake things up.
Yeah, in Virginia.
Yeah.
We've got a great Crystal line. R.I.P. Crystal. This wasn't the first time I've eaten a person. I actually absorbed my identical twin in the womb.
Crystal. Gone too soon.
Definitely. And then in that same conversation, Misty saying young Kevorkian was kind of hot.
Have you looked at young Kevorkian?
No, I have not looked it up. No.
Hey, Jodie.
Are you going to say it?
I mean, he wasn't I mean, she's not totally wrong. I'm just saying. It wasn't the craziest thing she's ever said.
There's also one more classic Jeff line that I have to shout out. When he answers the phone, when Shauna calls him at work, McDonald's chicken nugget department. She says, "I'm sorry, did you say chicken nugget department?" He says, "I sure did, because I'm selling 6 pieces like it's my job, baby."
He's perfect.
I fucking love Jeff so much. He's so funny.
He's just...
he's got the one-liners. Him and Misty, they're like the
Jeff's
the
a
stars
dad,
of that.
and so he's he is just the daddest of dads.
Yes, he is the daddest of dads. Oh, I love it. Okay.
Perfect.
So that was our quotes of the season.
I want listeners, if Jodie and I missed any there
which
that
we
you
did.
love, let us know.
Yes, please. I would love to hear everyone else's favorites. Those were just the ones that, like, during my rewatch, I was like, yeah, I got to write that down.
These are the ones.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about, we talked more about the music in season 1 when we did our sort of not side podcast, your other real podcast, the Left of the Dial.
Whoa, these are both real podcasts.
I know,
my music
but that was a
podcast.
pre-existing music podcast, Left of the Dial. Shout out.
Thank you.
But and we've mentioned the music kind of in passing when it's come up in different episodes, but I was wondering if you had a needle drop or two that stuck with you.
The first one, I'm just going first thought, best thought. The first one there are two actually that just jumped out to me. And the first one is Misty walking up to Walter's boat with Veruca Salt Seether playing. It's just a perfect needle drop. We've
been waiting for Veruca Salt too.
Yeah, we never got Volcano Girls, which I think is, that's a little bit of a miss, but Seether in that moment is great. And Seether is a perfect song for this show. And then, of course, I said, of course, well, there's so many. But the second one I was thinking of was Bullet with Butterfly Wings, when Nat goes running through the woods when they're chasing after her. What about you?
So for me, Cornflake Girl, when she eats the ear.
The show's a comedy.
It's getting kind of gross. Yeah.
The show's a comedy.
I think mine are almost all funny. Not all of them. But Jeff twice in the car, once with Papa Roach when he's rocking out and getting out his aggression.
That might be the hardest. Like, that was the most, that one surprised a laugh out of me more than anything else in this season, I think, because it's so perfectly like shot, and the way it the way
the song kicks in.
Oh, what a perfect moment.
So great.
So funny.
And then along those same lines, when he's listening to Fuck the Police outside the police station, which is just such a teenage thing to do.
Yeah.
Just like, you're really sticking it to the man by listening to a song in a car.
That'll show him.
A couple others that really on rewatch especially stood out to me was Danzig starting when Shauna goes into labor.
How did I forget?
Mother.
Oh
so
my
good.
God. And one of the few Jersey artists featured.
Yeah.
I still think maybe off the top of my head, the only Jersey artist I can think of.
I wonder if that's true. It's definitely the only one that I can think of off the top of my head. And then just one more that I think isn't as fun. Mm-hmm. But when Radiohead Climbing Up the Walls comes on, when Shauna kneels at the body, a lot of the really effective songs that are inserted in the needle drops are literally about the moment that the needle physically would drop on the record, or when the moment when the song starts, and how it correlates to an action, right? So Jeff in the car, it's like he's drumming on the steering wheel. Radiohead's literally the needle drops when Shauna kneels in front of the body. And so it's not just the song, but it's the timing in the show.
Perfectly, yeah.
Yeah. So we did this last time, but I am curious if, given what we now have seen, if there are songs that haven't been incorporated, or artists that you would like to see in season 3.
I should have been preparing for this.
It's better that you're not, because it'll just be top of the head stuff.
I will say one of my predictors that I'm surprised we haven't heard yet is Gin Blossoms. They might be a little too light although their history as a band is really tragic. So I'm still holding out for Gin Blossoms. This is a little obvious, but I would love to hear Basket Case, Green Day, or Longview. Longview or Basket Case, either one of those would be... Brain Stew's a little late, but there's no reason we couldn't hear, or although they're not paying attention, they're not as concerned with the music in 96 actually being from 96 now. With the new music director, they kind of... Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm surprised. We still haven't really gotten much other than, I guess, Danzig, but I don't really think of them as him as anyway, we haven't gotten much of the Green Day era, that kind of punk.
The pop punk sort of.
Yeah. And it was such a huge part of the late 90s. I'm just surprised we haven't.
It was. I wonder if we'll get more of that when they come back.
Could be. Yeah.
That would be fun. That would be a fun music shift to have, where when they're back in 98 and then it can go from this sort of dark Radiohead, Nirvana Smashing Pumpkins moody vibe to like something slightly more chaotic and yeah.
Totally. That's a really cool idea that shift would be marked by their return. I would love that.
Hire me as a music supervisor.
And I think, I would love to hear some Green Day in there. You just reminded me of something that I've been thinking about too, is that we talked early on about two things. One being how interested we were to see them back in Jersey after their rescue, which we've still not seen anything of.
Yeah.
And a lot of our speculation early on before season 2 was like, how are they going to deal with the like fallout from the end of season 1 and like, you know, the investigation with Shauna? How long can they go with Shauna with this murder looming? And it's like, well, season 2 2021 only lasted about a week. So like they really, because I was like, well, I guess they could drag the investigation out long enough that it doesn't really get in the way of things, because investigations take a long time, blah blah blah. Like maybe it'll take them forever to find the body. And actually that stuff moved much faster. It just hasn't been a major issue because what we got in 2021 was such a short period of time. Or not that it hasn't been a major issue, but the like results of those things we just haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah. And I'm curious to see if they've decided that Walter did in a one fell swoop tie everything up, or if that is just not possible, because I mean it doesn't seem possible that actually tied everything up, considering everything we've said.
Do you think that's something you'd be able to suspend your disbelief for?
I wouldn't want to. Like, I wouldn't be happy about it. I think that I could get over it because there's other things about this show that I enjoy so much that I'm, again, willing to kind of look past some things. But I do think that that's a pretty neat ending. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cleanly tied up.
Well, and it requires...
I don't need... Yeah, I mean, I don't need every detail to be picked apart and dealt with, but like, if they look at that and say, oh yeah, we tied it all up, it's fine.
Yeah.
And don't let any of that kind of peek back in here and there.
Especially because it requires them believing that Kevin would have climbed into the trunk of the car before Matt shot him. Yeah,
that's pretty...
And, like, this is a show that is aware of true crime podcasts and citizen detective type people. So, like, they know that people watching the show
maybe that's how they deal with it, you know? Maybe the citizen detective community is a bigger part of season 3.
You know what would be fun? You know what? Yeah, because and then the other thing I was going to say, it would require the things that would make it hardest for me to believe that this just gets dealt with are Kevin being shot in the trunk after, which is a weird misstep. I would have thought of Walter's. But then also Lisa just keeping her mouth shut about what she saw. And I
believe Lisa's a big part of season 3 somehow.
Yeah.
Or at least a part of it.
But I do kind of love the idea of the police bungling it because, you know, fuck the police. And the citizen detectives who Walter and Misty have been so entwined with, of like them being the ones to be like, hold on, this doesn't make sense. And Misty and Walter having to deal with the community that you know,
turns on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see that.
That's kind of fun. Yeah.
I only have one or two music hopes for season 3 at the top of my head because I didn't actually write this part down. Mm-hmm. But I'm still feeling like, and maybe this is just me, like Concrete Blonde should come in at some point because they're just obscure enough that it would be like it would really resonate with certain members of Gen X, and then would also maybe lead to other people discovering them.
Right. That's cool.
And then my other one is, I'm shocked still that we haven't had any Ani DeFranco.
Yeah, what the hell?
Considering we have like the quintessential like van lesbian, like there's no way she didn't listen to Ani DeFranco. There just isn't.
No.
So those are my two.
I will say I'm going to predict we never get any Kate Bush because the music supervisor is the one who brought Kate Bush to Stranger Things and blew that up
that hill.
And I would bet that she doesn't want to, like, that's going to color any use of Kate Bush in
totally.
And
absolutely.
I just thought of one more for 2021 or for 96. It could go wherever, but it's a flag we've been flying here since pretty much day one. It's one I will not let rest. It is our personal little campaign. Put screaming females in Yellowjackets. They're perfect.
I'm nodding along. Yes.
There's nobody
agree.
who makes more sense to me at this point to be featured in. So let's start
100%.
that campaign. Remember that show Jericho? Everybody sent, I don't know why, but when Jericho was canceled, all of the people who watched that show sent walnuts to the studio or to the network as like a protest.
I have no knowledge of any of this.
It was a show called Jericho. I know nothing about it except maybe Skeet. Anyway, and I just know that was like a protest when the show, and I think it may have resurrected it. I could be wrong about that. I would like us to start a campaign for...
What can we send to the creators of Yellowjackets to make them include screaming females next season? Yeah. I'm in. Whatever it is.
I don't know what... We'll think about it. About it. You got to listen to our next episode.
I did not prepare you for this.
Uh-oh.
Which I apologize for. So I don't expect you to have your own versions of these, but if you come up with any, feel free to throw them at me.
Okay.
So we know that like the Yellowjackets PR people had put out the superlatives for our Yellowjackets, notably the one with Mari saying that she's most likely to contact you on Facebook after 20 years, right? Which gives us that leads to the question, is Mari still alive somewhere? Which I think is entirely possible. I came up with some of my own superlatives that I would like to ask you who you think this would be. And I think that I created these in the mindset of if they had never gotten trapped in the woods.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Theoretically. I mean,
this is like sort of knowing what we know about their characters, but if they graduated when they were supposed to.
Kind of more normally,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the first one is most likely to have gone to a basement punk show while at Rutgers. Or to be a part of that scene.
Nat.
Yeah, I think that has to be Nat, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she's probably in one of the bands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's the coolest. Or I guess I could have maybe... Nat.
I think she's the obvious choice. I could see maybe like Van being a part of that scene, but like Nat would be in a band. These say more about me than anyone else. You'll know why when I say this one. Most likely to move away and then make New Jersey her entire personality. If I can't call myself out, who can?
My first thought was Shauna. But depending on where we're going, I could also see that being Mari.
I could see that. I kind of was weirdly thinking Misty, but I think that's just because I think she's desperate to hold on to like whatever is the most sort of like significant about her past.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I guess I was thinking my first thought was like, who could I imagine most likely to move away?
Right.
And I just don't see Misty as somebody who's like interested in leaving.
That's true. Yeah, very true. Again, this may be saying more about me than anyone else. This all came to me this morning. Most likely to get really into plants during the pandemic.
See, now that's Misty to me.
Really?
Yeah, I could see Misty being a weirdly obsessive plant parent with like names and personalities for all of them, and
right. Yeah, I could see that.
But maybe they're all weird little plants, like it's like Venus flytraps and stuff. Maybe
that's exactly where I was going. Was that it's like a Little Shop of Horrors? House.
Exactly.
I could see that.
That
makes sense to me.
Little Shop of. Can I just put this into the universe? This is really. I'm about to be absolute internet cringe, and I'm so sorry. But I didn't know what I needed in my heart was Misty and Walter doing Suddenly Seymour.
I knew you were going there.
Isn't that perfect?
It is perfect. Maybe next season we'll see it. Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, yes.
Who's your...
I think Misty makes sense. I was thinking more in terms of the like cringe Instagram plant person that I was during the
Lottie.
pandemic. Yes.
Of course, Lottie.
Yes. Taking aesthetic photos of the new leaves on her monstera.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right.
Hanging crystals in the window.
Exactly.
For the rainbows. Yeah, 100%. This one does not relate to me at all, but I was just randomly, I spend too much time on TikTok these days. And I was noticing, as if I'm like the first person to know this, like people's videos blow up for random things on TikTok, right? Like, power washing is like
it's a thing now. Yeah.
On TikTok. So my superlative was most likely to blow up on TikTok, and for what? I don't have an answer to this one. This just kind of like occurred to me in the morning.
Yeah. Maybe it's just because Lottie's on the brain. And I also, TikTok is not something I spend much time on, but I've been dabbling lately, but my algorithm is so confused. And I just watched somebody make a drink that somebody else, quote unquote, invented that was just blending 4 entire lemons, or maybe it was 2, whatever, a bunch of lemons and a big knob of ginger and some honey, and then straining it and drinking it and saying it was very delicious. Which is like, if you think the health benefits are there, fine, but that's not good.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody who has eaten an entire lemon once in my life. So
Famously.
And so I could see Lottie blowing up on TikTok for some weird wellness drink. But that's not really a wellness drink. That's just some bullshit.
Yeah, with ashwagandha.
Ashwagandha, exactly.
I think that makes a lot of sense, actually. Maybe this is just because I want to see this. I could see Van starting a whole genre of videos of just like tapes rewinding.
Wow, I would love to
like
watch
the old
that.
School box rewinders that we had.
Yep.
Where you
And
just
she like
stick the tape in.
introduces the video. So you see it's like, and today we're going to be rewinding while you were sleeping. And like holds we're going to cut this. And we're going to.
Is this $1 million idea?
I would watch 1 million of those.
Is this $1 million idea? Do I need to go to the thrift store and get a.
Hear the slap down and man.
Yeah.
Is this just for people who worked at video stores and had to do it 500 times a day?
And then the sound of it going back into the plastic case.
Oh, man.
And the snapping of the case shut.
And depending on which case, if it was one of the clamshells, and you kind of go around and make sure the edges were all like clack, clack.
Yeah. So that's my vote then. Van doing a whole thing on TikTok of rewinding videotapes.
Jodie, you're a genius.
I think I might be, actually, now after that.
I think you do need to go get an old-fashioned rewinder and a bunch of VHS tapes.
Yeah. I still have some VHS tapes.
I would
I don't have anything to play
that.
them on, but...
Well, this isn't for playing them. This is for rewinding them. Well, I guess you'll have to play them to rewind them.
Right. Yeah, that is a wrinkle, actually.
You didn't think about that. I can't believe that what's going to happen when we hang up is I'm going to go online and buy an old VCR and an old rewinder. And it's not... And I have ADHD, so I have a mighty need to do that right now. And then I'm going to forget and do nothing with it. And then for the rest of my life, I'm just going to have to lug around a VCR and an automatic rewinder.
I'm so sorry.
You did this.
I'm so sorry. I don't think my last one is as good as that one, so I kind of want to cut it. But my last one was most likely to move to New York City after college and never speak of being from Jersey ever again.
It is... I know that this isn't true for the actor. This is the opposite of true for the actor who plays this person. But there is a part of me that thinks that Ty would imagine herself thriving in New York City, and would imagine her vision for her perfect life would be one that has to happen in New York City.
I think Ty is the answer.
I know that Tawny is sitting up
she's
in
a
a
Jersey
cold...
tomato.
Yeah, that's right. She's sitting up in a cold sweat right now because I dared mention the idea that a character she plays wouldn't, at her heart, be New Jersey.
No, Tawny's a Jersey tomato. We know that. But
something we all
I do think
say about ourselves always and always
all the
have.
Time.
Yep.
Yes.
Tawny, my God.
But I do think that Ty is the answer. I think that she has suppressed her past almost more than anyone else, and is so about striving and professionalism and making her present and future as different from her past as possible. And so I feel like most Jersey girls that grew up and felt that way at least started by moving to New York, because it's the closest place to do that.
That is North Jersey. That is South Jersey erasure, because some of us moved to Philly. But yeah. But that's not the same as moving to New York. It's not the same. You're right for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is that Philly is a lot easier to get into and out of, and cheaper than it is to get into and out of New York. So you can.
My God.
People aren't like. I know that people commute to New York for work, but like, you can't. You don't move to Philly and leave New Jersey behind. It's right there. It's like hi hello.
Yeah. No, it's true. Like, moving to New York City is extremely expensive even then, but also psychologically it's sort of a huge leap. It's like, especially if you grow up where I did in North Jersey, where you can kind of see it across the river a lot of times. It's like this mythical, even though I went there a lot as a kid, like all our school trips were to like museums in New York City. My mom would take me in.
But you know what a pain it is to do it. It's like a day. Like, even if
it's a thing.
Yeah. Philly, it's like, I'll pop over real quick because I want to get a good cup of coffee and there's a cafe. Like, you're not doing that in New York.
When I was growing up, New York was pre-Giuliani, trying to make everything sort of Disneyfied and more expensive and all of those things, gentrified, whatever. But it was sort of a wild place in my in all of our brains, I think, at that time. So I think Tawny's a true Jersey tomato, but I think Ty would move to New York and never speak of Jersey again.
Yeah.
But we would know anyway because of the accent.
That's right.
I'm sad we don't have a Tawny's accent corner this week, but I did not pull any clips.
Yeah, I didn't. I can't even remember. I was weirdly. I needed a little Yellowjackets detox, I think. This week after, I needed to put some space between me and the finale to be able to come back a little more objectively, which I think we did.
Yeah, I did too, and then I rewatched the whole season.
I don't know that I want to make any predictions for season 3 right now.
No.
If you've got any, I wonder if maybe we save. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I just have questions. I don't have predictions.
So maybe if you want to run through those, we'll probably do some sort of ramp up before the season 3 premiere.
100%. I don't even know that we need to go through the questions, because I think that they're obvious things like, what the fuck happened to Crystal's body?
Oh yeah.
Like, what's going to happen to Ben? Are they going to find out that he burned down the cabin? Did he actually burn down the cabin? Probably, but we don't know for sure. Are we going to figure out the symbol eventually? Like, all those things, they're the questions that everybody has. They're nothing special.
We'll find out, or we won't.
I fucking hope the writer's strike ends eventually.
Oh, God.
Solidarity with the writers, for sure.
Absolutely. And take the time you need.
We want them to get what they need.
Exactly. Do we want to let folks know before we head out what we're sort of thinking for the off season and what our plans are? Yeah.
So we're going to take a couple-week break because some of us just finished a semester and got dental surgery and need some time to breathe.
And I also don't want to rush into anything.
No, that's the thing. So we're looking to continue podcasting together in the off season about things we're excited about. And that is sort of the key to it, right? Like, we love talking about this show because we both got super excited about it. So we don't want to just pick up on a random show that happens to be out at this time, because that doesn't feel... A, like it'll be any fun for us, but also B, like it won't be fun for anyone else to listen to. So we're looking at current shows, other shows that we've been passionate about, different formats, whether it's like looking at movies in the same kind of genre, or we've talked about introducing each other to our other favorite shows, things like that. So we will come back with some more concrete details about that in the next week or two, and then we'll be back probably in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I would say.
We'll obviously post on
an
social
update.
media, and I'll drop
Yeah.
something quick in the feed the week before, just to let folks know if there's something that you want to watch with us.
Yeah.
I've had a couple. We've had a couple of interesting suggestions for things that we're going to check out and see how we feel. It's been really cool to see what other people who love Yellowjackets are also clicking with that I'd never heard of or would have thought to seek out. And even if we don't end up covering them, selfishly, I'm excited to have some shows to check out in the meantime.
Yeah.
We have a review since last we talked.
Yay.
On Mike, you and I, Jodie, that I'd like to share before we head out. If
I would love that.
okay, and this is from Laura 092314, and they said best Yellowjackets pod. I've tried several other Yellowjackets pods. Sadly, I couldn't get through a whole episode. This Yellowjackets pod is it. Love the banter between the hosts and that they live in New Jersey, which, and that they're
Just for honesty's sake, I have mentioned this. I do no longer live in New Jersey. I live in northern New Jersey, which is Rhode Island.
we'll say from New Jersey aggressively. I think.
Aggressively from New Jersey, correct.
Yeah.
I live in Rhode Island, but I have made New Jersey a significant part of my personality, even before this podcast, as evidenced by the fact that Andrea and I met
why we're friends.
through a New Jersey podcast.
Yeah. It's a great pod. Thanks, guys. So thank you so much. That feels so good. It's so nice
especially
to
because
hear.
if you can't make it through another podcast, ours is really fucking long.
Okay, here's something. Maybe we close out with this. One of the first things I said was in that season 1 recap, we were like, this is going to be a longer episode, but I promise our episodes will not be longer than the episodes of the show itself.
Has not happened one time.
I lied. Ooh, boy, did I lie big time.
Not happened one time.
And it's not going to happen this time.
Nope.
And
it is not.
So thank you for folks who do listen. I know that they're like, again, I said that because I thought that's what other people wanted, but I don't listen to any podcast that's under an hour about anything. Like I love to really settle into whatever I'm listening to. And if, our listeners, it seems like are the same. So I really appreciate, or if you're not, thank you for sticking around. And,
Yes. We've been having a good time. So it's good to know that other people have also been enjoying it.
Yeah. We're going to keep doing it either way, but I love hearing from folks. Oh, I meant to say, I want to hear more than anything, listeners, if you have either other cases to make for Jodie's superlatives, if you think there are other characters who fit them better, or if you have superlatives of your own. Yeah, let us know on Twitter and or Instagram at WatchersPodNJ.
Yes, please. And we are both floating around on Reddit. If you can, it's not too hard to figure out who we are.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to tell us there too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we will be back in a couple weeks. Everybody take a breath. We will be ingesting some more content and discussing it.
Ooh, ingesting is not the right word for this show.
No.
Any other show. This has been so fun. I'm not signing off as if we're actually saying goodbye. It's just it's a whole season.
I know.
All done.
I know.
It's been really so much fun, and I've loved getting to talk with you, Jodie, and to watch our little show together and to share it with other people. And
and I will say, I think everybody will understand this and know this instinctively, but if that bonus episode drops, we're here. We're here for you.
Don't
when
say
that drops.
If. Don't
no,
say
when
if.
that. I meant actually if it drops before we're going to meet again.
Oh.
Which is probably not going to.
Right.
I think that because of the writer's strike and a number of other things, they are not releasing it anytime soon. But if it happened to drop at a time when we were not actively podcasting about a show, we would be on the mic the next day.
I think that's true for anything. If we end up covering another show like
Yeah.
episode by episode for some reason in the off season. Whenever a cabin episode drops, that's what we're covering the following Tuesday.
Absolutely.
So just be prepared for that.
100%. Yes. So I just wanted to put that out there. We've got your back.
I'm glad that you said that.
Yes.
Yeah, we hope you guys will stick with us in the off season. If you don't, I guess we'll see you back for season 3. But hang around. We're gonna have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna talk about movies and TV and feminism and
yeah, exactly.
all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So, and follow us on our personal Instagrams if you feel like it. Mine is Jodie_Mim, M-I-M, on Instagram.
And I'm at AQ Andrea Q on Twitter and Instagram.
And that's it.
Say hello.
We will see you in a couple of weeks.
See you soon.
Bye.